Bullets shattered the warehouse windows as Detective Miguel Santos clutched a duffel bag containing $3.1 million in cartel cash. His back pressed against a concrete pillar, while automatic weapons fire erupted from three directions. Blood trickled from a graze on his temple as he watched his former partner, Ray Hendricks, emerge from behind a shipping container, his service weapon trained on Miguel's chest. "Drop the money, Miguel, and nobody else has to die," he shouted over the gunfire. But his hands trembled with the knowledge that either way, someone he cared about would pay the ultimate price tonight. Before I walk you through the full story, I just have a small favor to ask. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and let me know in the comments. What city are you watching from? It's always amazing to see how far this audience is reaching. Now let's get back to the story. But this moment of betrayal and bullets didn't begin with a warehouse shootout. It began 3 months earlier, when a decorated police detective discovered that sometimes the only way to fight monsters is to become one. Detective Miguel Santos stared at the crime scene photos spread across his desk like tarot cards predicting doom. Another family destroyed by the Herrera cartel, another case that would disappear into the legal system's black hole. After 15 years on the force, Miguel had learned that justice was a luxury the system couldn't afford. The Morales family, mother, father, 8-year-old daughter, executed because they witnessed a cartel money drop. Miguel had worked the case for 6 months, gathering evidence, building connections, preparing for trial. Then the key witness vanished, and the case died. Miguel's own sister, Carmen, had been killed 3 years earlier in cartel crossfire. The shooters were known, protected, untouchable. They drove Ferraris while Carmen's children lived in poverty, her husband struggling to pay for her funeral. That afternoon, Miguel led a raid on a cartel safe house. Inside, $3.1 million in cash, neatly bundled and labeled. Enough money to fund a small army, or to change dozens of lives destroyed by that same army. Within hours, federal agents arrived to claim the money. Civil asset forfeiture, they explained. The cash would disappear into government coffers while the Herrera cartel continued operating with barely a hiccup. Standing in that warehouse, watching millions in blood money about to vanish into bureaucracy, Miguel felt something snap inside him. These bastards killed my sister and destroyed my community. Maybe it's time they paid for it directly. That evening, Miguel found his informant Roberto drinking in a dive bar, his face bearing fresh bruises from cartel enforcers. "They're moving the money tomorrow night," he whispered. $3.1 million, heading to a new safe house. Roberto looked at Miguel with desperate eyes. "You know where they're going. You know their routes. What if that money just disappeared?" Miguel stared into his beer, watching bubbles rise like the souls of the dead. "Tell me more," he said quietly, crossing a line he'd sworn never to cross. Miguel's apartment transformed into something that would have horrified his former self. A command center for planning the theft of cartel money. Maps of safe house locations covered his walls. Surveillance photos filled notebooks, and timing charts tracked money movements with military precision. Miguel chose his crew from the ranks of the betrayed and the desperate. People who had lost everything to cartel violence and had nothing left to lose. Roberto was his longtime informant, whose family had been murdered by the Herreras. Roberto had survived by becoming invaluable to the cartel's operations, but his heart burned for revenge. Officer Jake Morrison was a patrol cop whose partner had been executed by cartel sicarios. Morrison's official reports were models of professionalism, but his unofficial activities involved hunting cartel members through LA's back alleys. Carmen was a police department IT specialist whose brother had overdosed on cartel heroin. Carmen could make surveillance systems blind and communications disappear without a trace. Father Miguel Herrera was a parish priest whose church served cartel victims. Miguel would help launder the money through charitable organizations that aided cartel victims. Miguel didn't recruit his team with promises of wealth. He recruited them with a vision of justice. "We're not stealing from innocent people. We're taking blood money and using it to heal the wounds that blood money created." Miguel's police access became their secret weapon. He knew cartel money movement schedules from surveillance operations. He had access to patrol routes and response times. He understood evidence protocols and how to avoid leaving traces. He could monitor police communications during the operation. In Miguel's living room, they planned to intercept $3.1 million during a cartel money transfer. Miguel would use his legitimate police authority to stop the vehicle, then disappear with the cash before backup arrived. Working as a cartel courier, Roberto provided critical intelligence. Money would be moved in a modified Honda Civic at exactly 11:30 p.m. Two guards, both armed, but not expecting police intervention. Route through industrial district with minimal witnesses. Destination, new safe house that police hadn't discovered yet. The team rehearsed their roles with religious devotion. Every evening for 3 weeks, they met in an abandoned auto repair shop that Father Miguel had quietly arranged through his parish connections. The smell of old motor oil and rust became their perfume of preparation. The concrete floor their stage for the performance that would either make them heroes or destroy them completely. Miguel practiced his arrest procedures until they became muscle memory. He stood before a cracked mirror salvaged from the shop's office, badge in hand, studying his own face as he delivered the lines that would either fool cartel guards or get him killed. License and registration, he repeated, adjusting his tone, his posture, his expression. Too aggressive and they'd suspect a setup. Too casual and they wouldn't take him seriously. The balance had to be perfect. Roberto played the role of the cartel guards, switching between nervous compliance and hostile suspicion. "You pigs got no jurisdiction here," he'd snarl, channeling the contempt he'd witnessed firsthand. Then he'd shift character, becoming the frightened driver who might cooperate if handled correctly. "Please, officer, I don't want no trouble." "Your Spanish needs work," Roberto told Miguel after one particularly intense session. "These guys will smell a gringo cop from a mile away. Say it like this. Documentos ahora mismo." Miguel repeated the phrase until it rolled off his tongue naturally, until he could bark commands with the authority that came from 15 years of street experience. Carmen worked with equipment that looked like it belonged in a spy movie rather than a police operation. Her communication jamming device was a custom-built marvel of circuits and antennas that could black out police radio frequencies within a 2-mile radius. She'd built it from components stolen from the department's evidence locker, parts from seized drug operations that had been gathering dust for years. "The beauty is in the simplicity," Carmen explained to Morrison as she calibrated the device. "Police radios operate on predictable frequencies. Flood those frequencies with white noise, and suddenly backup can't coordinate, dispatch can't respond, and we have a window of invisibility." Morrison tested the equipment by driving to different locations throughout the industrial district, confirming that Carmen's jamming field could indeed create a communications blackout exactly where they needed it. The irony wasn't lost on him. They were using the police department's own seized evidence to commit a crime against the police department. Morrison's security planning consumed him like an obsession. He studied satellite maps of the industrial district, timing every traffic light, measuring every alley width, calculating escape routes with the precision of a military strategist. His police training and tactical operations became their survival manual. "We need 3 exit strategies," Morrison insisted during one late-night planning session. "Primary route through the warehouse district, secondary through the rail yards, and emergency extraction through the storm drain system." He'd marked each route on a hand-drawn map, noting potential choke points, police patrol patterns, and civilian traffic flows. Roberto provided intelligence about cartel security procedures that chilled everyone's blood. "They don't just guard the money," he explained. "They guard against betrayal. Carlos Herrera shoots his own people if he suspects disloyalty. He killed his cousin last month for asking too many questions about accounting." The psychological preparation proved as important as the technical training. Father Miguel led them through exercises that felt like confession and therapy combined. "You're about to cross a line that can't be uncrossed," he warned. "Each of you needs to understand what you're willing to sacrifice and what you're not." Miguel found himself struggling with nightmares about Carmen's children, about Morrison's wife, about Roberto's remaining family members. "If this goes wrong, I'm not the only one who pays," he confided to Father Miguel during one of their private sessions. "I'm asking people I care about to risk everything for my vendetta." "It's not vendetta," Father Miguel corrected gently. "It's justice that the system failed to provide. But yes, the cost could be everything. That's what makes it a moral choice rather than a practical one." Carmen revealed technical details about police evidence protocols that made their money laundering plan possible. "Every dollar that goes into evidence gets logged, photographed, and tracked through multiple databases," she explained. "But money that disappears before it reaches evidence? It never existed in the first place." She'd hacked into the department's financial tracking systems, creating false reports that would make the missing $3.1 million appear to be a clerical error rather than theft. The beauty is that cartel money is already off the books. We're not stealing from the police. We're stealing money that was never supposed to exist. Morrison choreographed their movements during the actual heist with military precision. Miguel approaches from the driver's side, weapon drawn but not threatening. Roberto maintains overwatch from position alpha. Carmen initiates jamming sequence on my signal. Father Miguel stands ready at extraction point beta. They practice the sequence dozens of times, timing each movement to the second. Morrison played the role of cartel guard, sometimes compliant, sometimes resistant, sometimes violent. Expect the unexpected, he warned. These guys don't follow police academy rules. They shoot first and never ask questions. The weapons training took place in the desert outside LA, where Father Miguel had access to church-owned property that provided privacy and safety. None of them were strangers to firearms, but shooting at paper targets was different from preparing to kill human beings. I've never shot anyone, Carmen admitted as she struggled with a police-issue Glock. I'm not sure I can actually pull the trigger when it matters. Pray you don't have to, Morrison replied grimly. But if you do, don't hesitate. Hesitation gets you killed and gets your friends killed. These cartel sicarios won't show you mercy because you're having a moral crisis. Miguel watched his team transform during those 3 weeks of preparation. Roberto's nervous energy crystallized into focused determination. Carmen's technical brilliance expanded to include tactical thinking. Morrison's rage channeled into professional competence. Father Miguel's spiritual guidance became practical wisdom. But it was the small moments that revealed the true cost of their preparation. Carmen crying silently after weapons training. Morrison drinking alone in his car after particularly intense sessions. Roberto checking and rechecking his family's safety arrangements. Miguel staring at photographs of his dead sister while cleaning his service weapon. We're not the same people who started this, Miguel observed during their final preparation meeting. We can't go back to who we were before. Good, Father Miguel replied quietly. The people we were before couldn't do what needs to be done. The people we're becoming can. The final rehearsal took place on the actual route they'd used during the heist. At 2 a.m. on a Tuesday night, they drove through the industrial district, timing their movements, testing their communications, confirming that their plan could work in reality rather than just on paper. Everything went perfectly, too perfectly. Miguel felt a chill of premonition as they completed the dry run without a single glitch. It's never this easy, he murmured to Morrison as they headed back to the auto shop. That's what worries me, Morrison agreed. Real operations always have complications we didn't plan for. Roberto provided a final intelligence update that changed everything. Carlos Herrera is getting paranoid. He's added 2 more guards to the money transport and changed the route 3 times this week. Someone's been feeding him information about unusual police activity. The betrayal was closer than they'd imagined, and time was running out. As planning progressed, Miguel watched his team transform from grieving victims into focused professionals. They weren't just planning a theft. They were preparing to fight fire with fire. During final reconnaissance, Miguel discovered that Detective Ray Hendricks, his former partner, was secretly working for the cartel. The operation had a mole, and he was closer than anyone imagined. Miguel sat in his car outside Ray Hendricks' house, watching through binoculars as his former partner counted stacks of cash at his kitchen table. The man he'd trusted with his life for 5 years was counting cartel blood money like an accountant balancing books. Following a hunch, Miguel had tailed Hendricks after their shift. Instead of going home to his family, he'd driven to a warehouse meeting with cartel Lieutenant Carlos Herrera. The payoff was brazen, obvious, sickening. Miguel remembered all the times Hendricks had been perfectly positioned to sabotage investigations. Evidence that mysteriously disappeared, witnesses who vanished before testimony, raids that found empty warehouses. Ray hadn't just been corrupt. He'd been actively helping the people who killed Carmen. Hendricks knew about Miguel's investigation into cartel finances. If he suspected the plan, he could expose the entire operation before it began. Worse, he could set a trap that would destroy the team. Miguel realized he had to neutralize Hendricks without revealing his own plans. He began feeding him false information while gathering evidence of his corruption. When Miguel told his crew about the betrayal, Roberto nearly broke down. If Ray talks, we're all dead. The cartel doesn't just kill traitors, they kill their families too. Carmen proposed a radical plan. We can't trust police communications anymore. I'll need to create our own network, completely separate from department systems. Morrison wanted to eliminate Hendricks directly. He's a traitor and a murderer. Let me handle this the way it should be handled. We don't become murderers, Miguel told his team. We're fighting monsters, but we won't become them. We'll handle Ray, but we'll do it clean. Miguel began a careful campaign to neutralize Hendricks. He fed him false information about investigation timelines. He documented his corruption for future leverage. He redirected his attention toward fake cartel targets. Father Miguel reminded the team of their true purpose. We're not here for revenge. We're here to stop evil and heal our community. Don't let that mission corrupt your souls. Miguel arranged a fake operation to test Hendricks' loyalty. When he immediately contacted the cartel to warn them, his suspicions were confirmed beyond doubt. Hendricks approached Miguel after the test operation. I know what you're planning, Miguel, and I know you know about me. We need to talk. Miguel walked into the abandoned warehouse where he'd agreed to meet Hendricks, his service weapon loose in its holster, and his backup team positioned outside. The man he'd once trusted was now the most dangerous person in his world. Hendricks emerged from the shadows, his face a mixture of guilt and desperation. You don't understand the position I'm in, Miguel. The cartel has my daughter. They've had her for 2 years. Ray's story poured out in broken fragments. His gambling debts, the cartel's leverage, the gradual corruption that had transformed him from hero to villain. I never wanted this, but they made me choose between my family and my badge. Looking at his former partner, Miguel saw a reflection of his own potential future. They'd both been corrupted by the system's failures, but they'd chosen different paths. You could have come to me. We could have found another way. Hendricks offered a deal. Help me get my daughter back, and I'll help you take down the cartel. 3.1 million is nothing compared to what I can give you access to. Miguel had to decide whether to trust a man who'd already betrayed everything he'd once stood for. Could corruption be reversed, or was Ray too far gone to save? Roberto provided crucial updates about cartel operations. They're moving the money tomorrow night, but Carlos Herrera suspects something. He's added extra security. With Hendricks potentially compromised, Miguel had to redesign the entire operation. New routes, new timing, new protocols that assumed police communications were monitored. Carmen worked frantically to create encrypted communication systems that couldn't be intercepted by either cartel or corrupt police elements. Morrison prepared for the possibility of armed resistance. If this goes bad, we need to be ready for a war, not just a theft. Father Miguel arranged multiple locations for hiding the money after the theft, using church properties that provided both sanctuary and legitimacy. After agonizing deliberation, Miguel chose to include Hendricks in a limited capacity. You get one chance to prove yourself. One chance to save your daughter and your soul. Hendricks provided critical information about cartel security protocols and police response procedures that would make the difference between success and catastrophe. The night before the operation, Miguel barely slept. He was about to commit the biggest crime of his career while trying to maintain his principles and protect his team. At 10:30 p.m. on the night of the heist, Miguel received a text from an unknown number. We know what you're planning. Call off the operation or everyone dies. Miguel stared at the threatening text message while sitting in his unmarked police car, the industrial district stretching out before him like a battlefield. In 30 minutes, a Honda Civic carrying $3.1 million would drive through this maze of warehouses, if the operation wasn't already compromised. Despite the warning, Miguel made the decision to proceed. We've come too far to stop now. Roberto's family, Carmen's brother, my sister, they're all counting on us to see this through. Each member took their assigned position in the industrial corridor. Miguel positioned his police car for the traffic stop. Morrison provided overwatch from a warehouse rooftop. Carmen monitored communications from a mobile command center. Roberto tracked the money car's approach. Father Miguel waited at the first safe house. At exactly 11:30 p.m., the modified Honda Civic appeared on schedule. Roberto's intelligence was accurate. 2 guards, minimal escort, moving through the predetermined route. Miguel activated his police lights and pulled the vehicle over, using his legitimate authority to create the perfect cover for theft. To any observer, it was a routine police stop. When Miguel approached the vehicle, the guards immediately became suspicious. We weren't told about any police checkpoint, the driver said, his hand moving toward his weapon. Miguel realized the cartel had been warned about the operation. Someone had leaked their plans, and now he was walking into a trap with $3.1 million as bait. From his overwatch position, Morrison saw additional cartel vehicles moving to surround Miguel's location. "It's a setup," he radioed. "They're trying to box you in." What should have been a simple theft became a gunfight between corrupt cops, honest cops, and cartel sicarios. Miguel found himself caught in crossfire from multiple directions. In the chaos of the firefight, Miguel managed to reach the Honda's trunk. Inside, exactly as Roberto had promised, $3.1 million in cash, neatly bundled and ready for transport. Carmen jammed police communications to prevent backup from arriving, buying the team precious minutes to escape with the money. Hendricks appeared with cartel reinforcements, revealing that his cooperation had been a setup from the beginning. "I'm sorry, Miguel. They still have my daughter." Under heavy fire, Miguel and Morrison fought their way to their escape vehicle with the money. Roberto provided covering fire while Father Miguel prepared emergency extraction. They escaped with the $3.1 million, but the cost was higher than anyone had anticipated. Morrison was wounded, Roberto was compromised, and their police careers were effectively over. As they reached the first safe house, Miguel realized they were still being tracked. The cartel had planted GPS devices in the money bundles, and their enemies were closing in fast. Miguel stared at the GPS tracker hidden inside a bundle of $100 bills, its red light blinking like a mechanical heartbeat counting down to their doom. $3.1 million surrounded them, but it had become the most expensive trap in Los Angeles. Carmen's electronic equipment detected multiple GPS signals embedded throughout the money bundles. They turned the cash into a homing beacon, she realized. Every dollar is broadcasting our location. Cartel vehicles were already converging on their position. Miguel had minutes to make decisions that would determine whether his team lived or died. Miguel made the hardest decision of his life. "We split up the money and go to ground separately. If they catch one of us, the others might survive." The wounded patrol cop volunteered to take a portion of the money and lead the cartel away from the others. "I'm already marked for death. Let me make it count for something." Roberto knew tunnel systems beneath East LA that connected to storm drains and abandoned subway construction. The cartels don't know these passages exist. Father Miguel arranged safe houses throughout his parish, using religious sanctuary laws to protect the money and the team members. Carmen worked to erase their electronic footprints while creating false trails that would mislead cartel trackers and corrupt police. Working frantically, the team removed GPS devices from cash bundles while transferring money through multiple containers to break tracking chains. Leading his team through underground tunnels, Miguel grappled with the realization that his quest for justice had put everyone he cared about in mortal danger. Hendricks coordinated with cartel enforcers to track down the stolen money, knowing that failure would cost his daughter's life and his own. Father Miguel suggested an unexpected location, Jefferson High School, where he'd once served as a counselor. "The building is being renovated. We can hide the money in the walls during construction." Working through the night, the team concealed portions of the money throughout the school's renovation areas, sealing evidence behind walls that wouldn't be opened for decades. Morrison drew cartel forces into an abandoned warehouse, where he made his final stand with $500,000 as bait. The explosion could be heard across the industrial district. By dawn, Miguel Santos had vanished completely. His badge and service weapon were left behind, along with evidence that would eventually solve the case, but only 30 years in the future. Detective Hendricks found Morrison's body in the warehouse ruins, but the money had vanished. The cartel demanded answers he couldn't provide, and his daughter's life hung in the balance. 6 months after the heist, Detective Hendricks sat in his car outside Jefferson High School, one of dozens of locations he'd searched for the missing money. The cartel's patience was wearing thin, and his daughter's life depended on finding $3.1 million that had vanished like smoke. Carlos Herrera's threats became more explicit each week. "Find our money, detective, or your daughter will pay the price for your failures." The photographs they sent of his daughter in captivity were proof they weren't bluffing. Hendricks used every police resource available to track down Miguel's team. Roberto Vega had disappeared completely, possibly dead. Carmen had fled to another state under a new identity. Father Miguel continued his parish duties, appearing innocent. Miguel Santos was a ghost, with no trace of his existence. FBI agents took over the case, treating it as both police corruption and cartel money laundering. Hendricks had to navigate their investigation while secretly working for the cartel. Informants throughout East LA reported strange rumors, money appearing in poor families' mailboxes, anonymous donations to community centers, medical bills mysteriously paid for cartel victims. Federal investigators began to suspect that the stolen money was being used to help cartel victims rather than for personal enrichment. This made the thieves harder to track and sympathetic to the community. Father Miguel carefully distributed small amounts of money through charitable organizations, helping families destroyed by cartel violence while maintaining perfect deniability. Carmen had relocated to Portland, working under an assumed identity while using her portion of the money to fund anti-drug programs for teenagers. Sightings of Miguel Santos were reported across the Southwest, but none proved authentic. He had become a legend, a folk hero who had stolen from monsters to help the innocent. As months passed without results, Ray's position became increasingly dangerous. The cartel suspected he was protecting his former partner, while the FBI suspected he was working for the cartel. East LA residents, who had been helped by the mysterious money donations, formed an informal network protecting any information about Miguel's team. They saw them as heroes, not criminals. After 2 years, the FBI officially classified the case as cold. The money had vanished, the thieves had disappeared, and the cartel had moved on to other operations. Desperate to save his daughter, Ray made a deal with a rival cartel to eliminate the Herreras. If he couldn't find the money, he'd destroy the people demanding it. In 1995, 5 years after the heist, Father Miguel received a letter with no return address. The money is safe. Use it wisely. Justice sometimes requires patience. 20 years had passed since the cartel heist, and Miguel Santos had become a legend whispered about in East LA barrios, the cop who stole from devils to help angels. But legends are built on secrets, and secrets have a way of demanding payment. Living under the identity Mario Martinez in a small Oregon town, Miguel had used his portion of the money to become a victim's advocate, helping families escape gang violence. He never stopped being a cop. He just became an unofficial one. At Jefferson High School, renovation projects came and went over the decades, but the section where money was hidden remained untouched. The cash waited behind walls like a time bomb of truth. Father Miguel continued his work in East LA, gradually distributing the money through legitimate charitable channels. Families destroyed by cartel violence slowly rebuilt their lives with anonymous help. In Portland, Carmen had become a cybersecurity expert, using advanced techniques to protect vulnerable organizations while keeping her own identity secure. In 2010, Roberto's remains were discovered in a desert grave north of LA. The cartel had executed him as an example, but not before he'd suffered for information he never revealed. Ray had saved his daughter through violent means, eliminating the Herrera cartel leaders in 1995. But the cost was his own life. Rival cartels killed him in 2001, ending his 20-year nightmare. East LA residents still told stories about the mysterious benefactor who had helped them in their darkest hours. Children grew up hearing about El Detective Fantasma, who stole money from bad people to help good people. Jake Morrison was eventually honored with a memorial plaque for his sacrifice, though the truth of his final mission remained classified. His family never learned that he died protecting stolen money. Periodically, new FBI agents would review the 1990 case, but the trail had gone completely cold. The money, the thieves, and the evidence had vanished into American mythology. The Herrera organization had fragmented after the leadership's elimination, replaced by newer, more violent groups. The $3.1 million became a footnote in cartel history. Working as Mario Martinez, Miguel had helped over 300 families escape dangerous situations. He used his police training and cartel money to create an underground railroad for victims. Children who had been helped by the stolen money grew up to become teachers, social workers, and community leaders. The cartel's blood money had been transformed into hope. By 2015, advances in forensic science and database technology meant that cold cases could be solved with evidence that had been useless in 1990. The past was becoming less secure. Jefferson High School received a federal grant for complete renovation in 2019. Every wall would be torn down and rebuilt, including the walls hiding 30-year-old secrets. In 2020, a construction crew supervisor noticed that one section of wall sounded hollow and struck. Behind the plaster lay a cavity that hadn't been opened since 1990. The sledgehammer crashed through 30 years of painted plaster, revealing a cavity that exhaled the stale air of secrets long buried. Construction supervisor Tony Ramirez peered into the darkness and saw something that would rewrite Los Angeles criminal history. Wrapped in plastic and duct tape, Detective Miguel Santos's badge and service weapon emerged from the wall like artifacts from an archaeological dig. Alongside them, photographs, documents, and evidence that had waited 3 decades for discovery. Tony Ramirez and his workers stared at the cache in stunned silence. They were renovating a high school, not expecting to find evidence from one of LA's most famous unsolved cases. LAPD detectives arrived within hours, led by Detective Sarah Chen, who had studied the 1990 case as part of her criminal justice education. The evidence was perfectly preserved, frozen in time. Among the hidden materials were photographs of cartel money transfers, corrupt police payments, and documentary proof of the conspiracy that had led to the heist. Modern forensic techniques quickly identified the evidence as belonging to Miguel Santos, confirming theories that had circulated for decades about his involvement in the case. News of the discovery spread instantly across social media and traditional news outlets. 30-year mystery solved and dirty cop or folk hero dominated headlines. East LA residents who remembered the 1990s reacted with complex emotions. Many viewed Miguel as a hero who had fought corruption, while others saw him as a criminal who had betrayed his badge. The FBI immediately reopened the case, assigning a task force to investigate not just the original heist, but the decades of cover-up that had followed. Now in his 80s, Father Miguel came forward voluntarily to provide testimony about the team's motivations and actions. They weren't criminals, he insisted. They were soldiers fighting an unjust war. Learning of the discovery through news reports, Carmen contacted federal investigators from Portland, offering to provide testimony in exchange for immunity. Forensic accountants began tracing how the stolen money had been used over 30 years, discovering an extensive network of charitable activities that had helped thousands of people. Federal agents quickly identified Mario Martinez in Oregon as Miguel Santos, but when they arrived at his address, they found he had vanished again, apparently tipped off by someone monitoring the investigation. For the first time in 20 years, Miguel Santos was actively being hunted by law enforcement. But this time, the hunt was complicated by public opinion that increasingly saw him as a hero. The photographs and documents from the wall revealed the full scope of cartel police corruption in the 1990s LA, implicating dozens of officers and cartel members. Legal experts debated whether Miguel could still be prosecuted for crimes committed 30 years earlier, especially given the evidence of police corruption he had fought against. As federal agents closed in on Miguel's Oregon location, they discovered he had left behind one final message. The truth is in the school basement. Look under the boiler room floor. Detective Sarah Chen stood in the Jefferson High School boiler room, watching as FBI technicians carefully removed concrete floor tiles that hadn't been disturbed since 1990. Whatever Miguel Santos had hidden here would finally complete the story that had haunted Los Angeles for 30 years. Beneath the boiler room floor lay the motherlode, detailed financial records documenting every dollar stolen from the cartel and every penny distributed to victims' families. Miguel had kept meticulous accounts of his Robin Hood operation. The discovered documents revealed that $3.1 million had been transformed into $500,000 in direct aid to cartel victims' families, $800,000 in anonymous scholarships for at-risk youth, $600,000 in medical bill payments for shooting victims, $400,000 in small business loans for community entrepreneurs, and $800,000 still unaccounted for, apparently held in reserve. Within hours of the basement discovery, Miguel Santos walked into the Portland FBI field office and surrendered voluntarily. At age 64, he appeared calm, dignified, and unrepentant. Miguel's case became a national sensation, dividing public opinion between those who saw him as a criminal who had betrayed his oath and those who viewed him as a hero who had fought injustice when the system failed. The U.S. attorney faced an unprecedented situation, prosecuting a police officer for stealing cartel money to help victims of cartel violence. Legal precedents were sparse and public sympathy was complex. During preliminary hearings, dozens of East LA residents testified about anonymous help they'd received over the years. Medical bills mysteriously paid after family members were shot. College scholarships appearing for children of murdered parents. Small business loans that had no apparent source. Emergency assistance during family crises. Miguel's evidence exposed massive police corruption from the 1990s, leading to posthumous investigations of dozens of officers and the overturning of numerous convictions. Father Miguel provided crucial context about the community's suffering during the cartel wars and the failure of legitimate institutions to provide justice or assistance. Carmen's testimony revealed the technical aspects of the operation and the team's motivations, emphasizing their focus on helping victims rather than personal enrichment. Federal prosecutors offered Miguel a deal: plead guilty to theft charges in exchange for a suspended sentence and credit for the charitable work the stolen money had funded. As more details emerged about how the money had been used, public opinion increasingly favored Miguel. Protesters outside the courthouse carried signs reading, "Hero not criminal," and "Justice delayed is justice denied." Federal Judge Patricia Morales faced the challenge of balancing the rule of law against the community impact of Miguel's actions and the corruption he had fought against. In court, Miguel spoke publicly for the first time in 30 years. "I took an oath to protect and serve. When the system failed, I found another way to keep that oath. I regret the methods, but I don't regret the results." Judge Morales sentenced Miguel to 5 years probation and 1,000 hours of community service, stating, "The court recognizes that sometimes justice requires unconventional methods, but it cannot endorse vigilante action, no matter how well-intentioned." East LA residents celebrated Miguel's lenient sentence as a victory for community justice over institutional corruption. Street murals appeared depicting him as a folk hero. Jefferson High School established the Miguel Santos Community Service Award, funded by the remaining cartel money that Miguel had preserved for educational purposes. Father Miguel, now 85, expressed satisfaction that the truth had finally been revealed. "Sometimes God works through imperfect people to achieve perfect justice." Federal auditors confirmed that every dollar of stolen cartel money had been accounted for and used for charitable purposes, with no evidence of personal enrichment by any team member. Released on probation, Miguel returned to East LA to work openly as a victim's advocate, using his experience and notoriety to help reform police-community relations. A Netflix documentary about the case, "The Detective Who Stole from Devils," won multiple awards and sparked national discussions about police corruption and community justice. In 2021, statistical analysis showed that East LA neighborhoods that had received anonymous assistance in the 1990s had significantly lower crime rates and higher educational achievement than comparable areas. The LAPD Museum created an exhibit about the case, displaying Miguel's badge and weapon alongside documents about police corruption and community healing. Miguel, now working openly in the community he had served secretly for decades, reflected on his choices. "I broke the law to uphold justice. History will judge whether that was right or wrong." At Jefferson High School's 2022 graduation, valedictorian Isabella Morales, whose family had been helped by anonymous assistance in 1995, dedicated her speech to "the guardian angel who taught us that sometimes heroes don't wear capes, they wear badges and make impossible choices." Miguel Santos, now 66, sat in the Jefferson High School auditorium where his secret had been hidden for 30 years, watching a new generation of students graduate, many of them children and grandchildren of families he had helped with stolen cartel money. $3.1 million stolen in a moment of desperate justice had grown into something immeasurable: hope, education, healing, and proof that sometimes the greatest crimes are committed in service of the greatest good. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one.